Okay, it's approximately 9:30 on Sunday morning, March 8th, and we're gonna start with our workshop. Essentially, the goal here is to work on our presentation for our town meeting. And some of us are having breakfast,
Oh, that's fine.
no,
Yeah.
just in case they sounded garbled. So I'll let you start, Bridie. You said you had quite a lot of,
I had a lot of calls this week asking for different information. I think there are three opinions out there. One, that this is a historical building and we should keep it for that reason, no matter what the cost is. Two, and this is kind of two-pronged, that the repairs needed are not that big, and that we've been kind of snowed, or we're kind of naive to think that we really need to put that kind of money into the building. And then there are those who say, yeah, it's time to move on. They're not calling me as much, but I hear them out around in
yeah,
the community.
I've talked to a few of those.
But this week I got the engineer's too young and he doesn't know what he's talking about, and there are some minor repairs needed, but there's not big repairs needed. Along with that, I had people asking me for numbers and asking me about the insurance, and so I thought we needed to pull this together a little
Sure.
more to have something to actually put in front of. I mean, I have the numbers. I found in the town reports I've been going through and looking at numbers. I found that we had a renovation committee for many years and they posted a letter. That helped me piece together better than the numbers did what we've actually done and haven't done. One of them referred to a facility assessment report done by carpenters in 1999, which I didn't know existed. I've since found it. That's a very interesting document.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. And I've also done some census numbers, which I think I passed on to you.
Yeah,
So
you did, which
I
were
think
kind of
if-
interesting.
They're interesting. So I thought if we wanted to start pulling some of this together, I brought all the pictures we have. I brought census numbers. Just need to know where we're going here.
I had a call from, I guess it would be Group 2. This citizen, he toured the building, he went downstairs, walked around the building, and in his opinion, the engineering firm has absolutely no idea what they're talking about. The building is beautiful, which it may be. But I suggested that if we hired a second or a third engineering firm and they came up with the same, would that change your opinion? And he admitted it probably wouldn't. So that's kind of, it reminds me a little bit of like road building, where we hire an expert to say, this is how you do it.
Right.
And then there's always 4 or 5 people locally that say, that's just a crazy way to do it. I can't believe you're doing it that way. So,
Well, there's one group that says it's been like that forever and we don't need to address it. This report says it's been like that forever and you should have addressed it
Long time ago.
10, 15 years ago.
We're already past the life expectancy.
Yes.
That was
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah, I picked up on that.
and the third group, it's interesting, I've talked to a number of people who seem to be able to understand why it isn't really rational for us to continue with this huge building. But a lot of them are intimidated. A lot of them are not really willing to speak up. So I found that kind of interesting. Now, once they know the real numbers as to what it will personally impact them, then some of them might be less reticent, but that's kind
Yeah.
of fascinating.
I think it's interesting how many people believe that this town is not putting money in this building.
That was one of the things that the call I got last night, he said, part of it is we haven't done anything.
Yeah, we never put no money in it, what do you expect?
Well, that isn't really the case.
Yeah, you want to guess how much?
So as far as the phone calls that I've gotten, a lot of people calling me about the PE, the professional engineer, and not being too young and having no experience, and most of them were builders. One was an engineer that called me, and you know, I tried to explain to them that becoming a PE is a big deal. It's a big deal. I mean, it's not like you get out of your 4 years of engineering school and you're a PE. That's not the case at all. It's then you have to be certified as a PE. So there, I think trying to explain to them that those people that are professional engineers have a lot of knowledge, and also when they put a stamp on something, and if you noticed on that report from Carpenters, it's a stamp.
It's like a certification.
Yeah.
No, that's the
So
former,
they're putting their name on
that's
the
the
bottom line.
former owner's
Right.
stamp.
And then the other group that called me were people that wanted to start a committee. Want a building committee.
Yeah, I got that one too.
Right, yeah, and I came to the conclusion that most of them want the committee but don't want to work with the PE. But I did speak to one person that said that they would love to be on a committee and work with the professional engineer, because the bottom line is we have to work with who's willing to put their name on the bottom line. So anyway, those are the people that I spoke with.
Well, as far as working with the engineer, this is evidence that we've worked with Carpenter Associates since '99. They trusted them in '99. They trusted them again in 2003 and '04 when they wanted plans for the basement. You know, if they want somebody else, that's fine as well, but it seems we have a long-standing
And I
history.
don't think it would make any
Knows the
difference.
building more than anybody.
Correct.
It wouldn't make any difference though.
No, but I mean, we've already had, that's the third company that was been here,
Right.
and they all saying the same thing.
And like I said, if we brought in 2 more.
Yeah, you bring in 10 more, it's not gonna,
But I think the point that we need to convey is why are we reluctant? And I think it's more about the math as it applies to our tax base. When I spoke to the gentleman last night, I was trying to explain to him, Central Hall in Dover Foxcroft was a $2 million rehab. And it took a decade, but it came out beautiful. And I've been to things there, and it's a nice project. And if you assume that this building would be a similar investment to get it up to speed, Dover Foxcroft's tax base is literally double what ours is. So it's not really very complicated. It would be 100% more expensive for a homeowner in Sangerville to complete the same project. And if you take it out further, if Herman had this antique building and they wanted to rehab it, it would be 25 cents on the dollar for a Herman resident versus Sangerville. And if you go the other way, if you go to Blanchard, and Blanchard was gonna try to rehab this building with their tax base, if you have a $100,000 home in Sangerville, this project would reasonably cost you $4,000. In Blanchard, it's gonna cost you $8,000. In Dover Foxcroft, it's gonna cost you $2,000, okay? And so, that's the problem, if you don't appreciate that, you don't appreciate our reluctance.
Right.
Cause I feel like, whether it's rehabbing an antique building, or buying a piece of equipment, or, I feel like it's our responsibility to spend the taxpayers' money prudently. And I just don't see any rationale for hitting these people this hard. This is a big project for a very small town. If you did this in Bangor, nobody would feel it.
Right, yeah.
But you do it here, and you're gonna impact some people.
well, especially when you take those numbers that you got, off median age and household
Oh,
income.
boy, yeah.
The
Yeah,
amount of people that aren't paying the taxes can't afford to pay the taxes the first year now.
And if you look at the number of deaths, births, and marriages, and what that might mean for use up there, there aren't many. We had 3 couples get married in Sangerville this year, 7 Sangerville residents get married in all. We're not having those kind of things.
and honestly, my caller responded to that. He's like, I didn't realize that. I said, yeah, that's the problem. I said, we're spreading a very expensive project over very few people. But I said, I think the select board would fully support moving this beautiful building to a nonprofit. It would never get torn down at that point.
Right.
In fact, if you leave it where it is, if we continue on the trend that we're on, some select board sometime is gonna tear it down, because they're not gonna be able to afford it.
Right, and I mean, they discussed that way back, what year
Yes,
was
it was in the
Yeah.
early nineties.
Yeah, early nineties.
And then they put this facility assessment plan in
Correct.
place and started
With
working on it
priorities,
with
right.
priorities, and they've had 20 years,
And we spun our wheels.
we've spun our wheels, we didn't get there.
But not only that, the work that we did do, we didn't do under the recommended way of doing things,
Because it was too expensive.
because it was too
Right, right,
expensive.
right, all
We tried to do
along the way.
it in,
Yeah.
our own way, and
Yeah.
all it's done is, it's failed. I mean,
Right.
that's why we are where we're at.
Right.
So go back to the Central Hall and Dover Foxcroft. That was kind of a push-pull there. The difference there was, there were a group of citizens that were anxious to sell that building because it had value. The Rite Aid had bought an old building across the street a few years earlier, and it was estimated in meetings that would bring about 200 grand. So there were plenty of citizens who wanted to realize that asset. So then the Friends of Central Hall were pushing, give us an opportunity to rehab this thing. So the push-pull was very different there. It was gonna definitely be torn down, and it was gonna be sold to gain 200 grand. Here, I don't think we're under any illusion that this is worth 200,000. I mean, we had one real estate person come in and give us, and that's assuming if it really needs $300,000-400,000 of foundation work. So I think there would be no push to sell it. There'd be no group
For
of citizens,
value.
yeah, that say,
For
let's
value,
realize.
for value.
Right.
Right. Right.
So if you have a group of citizens that have a fire in the belly to really save this architectural gem, I got a feeling that the townspeople would support it. And yeah, just like Central Hall, it took a decade, it might take a decade. I mean, we worked on it for 20 years and haven't gotten anywhere, so, but at least it will always be here. In the meantime, we can go on about creating an efficient office that's safe and doesn't have rodents, that you can heat for a few $100s. That's really what's required.
Well, the other thing too, though, is everybody's opinion, and everybody's gonna have their own opinion. But this is no different than at your home. If your insurance company shows up and they say, you need to fix your steps, and you gotta put a railing up, and you gotta paint, you gotta do this, you have to do that.
It's a little different in
But I'm
that
just-
it's public and that you even more
That's
have
what
to
I'm saying, now
have
that
to do that.
this is all extrapolated because it's a municipal building, but for all of us to say they're wrong, that's not an option. I mean, they threw up the flag, the engineers confirmed it, we've got contractors that have confirmed it.
Yeah. So how do you made it sound like you can't reason with the people who say,
Well, it's interesting, when I spoke about the idea that there were the Friends of Sangerville Playhouse, I mean, whatever you wanna call it, he's like, but I said, I have talked to people who are, strong supporters of the building, and when you suggest that you create a group like that, they're like, they don't wanna do anything.
Right.
They don't have anything to do with
Right.
it. Now, I don't think that's necessarily everybody. And we met with, Chris Moss.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, he, if you read the articles, he was single-handedly kind of the spirit behind getting that thing going, and he thought this building had potential.
Yes, he did.
But he didn't think it should be the yoke around the
Right.
neck of the property owners.
Right. Now, as far as Central Hall, did the town hold it?
The town office was in it.
No, I know that.
They
I know
held it
that,
for a
but
year
they-
for him
did
to
they
get-
hold it?
Yeah,
The
they
real
gave him
estate?
1 year
Oh,
because.
they gave him 1 year. Oh.
The pushback was, we can sell this for 200, now you want us to heat it and maintain it?
Oh, and hang on to it.
So he said, all right, give me a certain amount of time to raise 25 grand, cause that's what it costs to mothball the building. And he did it.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, he stood up at the first meeting and he said, I'll donate $250, I just need this.
Okay,
But they did that right then. I mean, that was Dover's plan. When Dover decided they were out,
they moved out,
they're done.
right.
And that 1 year that they held it for him, he raised the funds to heat the building. It didn't even take cost of taxpayers,
Okay.
even from that point forward.
But keep in mind, this is the thing that is 80, actually less than $80,000 is one bill in Sangerville. It's about $160,000 in Dover Foxcroft. And they had no stomach for repairing that $2 million building.
Right.
They didn't want to do that to
Right.
their taxpayers.
Right,
It's 100% more expensive here.
right, right. Twice the price.
So for me, when I raised my hand and said I would do this, I just felt like probably one of the greatest responsibilities we have is to prudently spend taxpayer money.
That's exactly right. That's,
So whether this engineer doesn't know what he's talking about, or we have a committee that might know what this isn't really a practical.
right, right.
The linkage of our town office, which we need to have, to this 120-year-old playhouse, I don't know why that has to be.
Right,
Any more than you would link your fire department to it, or you name it, I mean.
right. The only other thing is that if we get something that's smaller and more efficient and everything else, yes, that's an expenditure of money. And so, maybe people are thinking, well, why not stay here and expend that money here?
You can't scratch the surface.
I know.
I think we
that.
could build a place for less than 200 grand.
Right.
In fact, if, it's interesting, I mean, I'm not disparaging anybody from 20 years ago, but there were people who were looking at this saying, this doesn't really make sense.
Right.
Let's get out of here and do something more efficient. If they had done that, think of the money they would have saved the town.
That's true, that's a good point.
We wouldn't be having this conversation. We wouldn't have spent $10,000 a year in energy.
Yep.
So, I mean, I wish they had tried a little harder.
Now, did they fall off after these reports, and they said they were gonna go on a 10-year hiatus, did they fall off the budget map as far as
Well-
continuing to budget money?
It's interesting, when you read it, you can tell that, at least I got the sense that financially it was painful.
Yeah.
So they said, okay, that's it, we're not doing anything else for 10 years.
That's right.
Yeah.
But they hadn't really done much.
No.
They did some roof work.
And the sprinkler, the sprinkler was the biggest thing, and then the renovation, right, of
Yeah.
this town.
They worked on that porch out there because it was gonna fall off apparently,
Uh-huh.
but they started that work in 2007. I don't know if they completed it. They appear to have redone it again in like 2013. It was back on the radar and they were,
But we seem to have everything we've done here, like I said.
But this.
Circles back around.
Yes.
This committee sort of dropped off the,
yes,
Right.
in 2005
I mean, this.
report, that was the last
Okay.
report and they.
And they didn't ask for money from the budget, and nobody budgeted for them?
They budgeted it differently.
Oh, okay.
They didn't use the committee.
They didn't use the committee and they didn't separate a line out that said town renovation and put any money aside.
I see.
But they found money to do some roof work, and a little bit to do the front porch twice, and then back just before the 200th anniversary, they redid all the siding. And that took them, started in 1 year, took a year off and did the rest.
Painting it and restoring it?
Well, they had to take the siding all off and replace most of it, because carpenters in their assessment in '99 had said it was in poor condition. We hadn't addressed it, they wanted it to look good for the 200th, and so they addressed it, and that cost us about $100,000.
And then the other thing that I thought was a shame is that they renovated the kitchen upstairs with
They did,
cabinets, et
they
cetera,
did.
before having an elevator up there. I mean, was.
Well, they got
still
within
considered.
$5,000 of having that elevator. It might have really changed might not have, but,
Yeah, but if they would've got the elevator, that just extrapolates your cost every year.
yeah.
And you gotta keep it certified.
Buying an
Oh, I
elevator is
know.
cheap.
Yeah,
Then,
Well, you certainly,
It
if
was
you're
cheaper.
if you're going to put an elevator in a building, you want a building that's not going to move.
right.
So
Yeah.
they may
Right.
have dodged a bullet.
and the
Right.
fact, the fact that when you go down and look where they were going to put it, there's always water in that hole.
So, anyway,
That doesn't suggest to me that that's a good place for
The
an
thing-
elevator.
The interesting thing is, if the folks that say there's really nothing wrong with the building, it's never gonna fall down, and,
In our
you're
lifetime.
basically you're worrying about nothing.
Right,
That kind of supports the idea that an outside group take control of it, because
Right.
it's in great shape. It's not like you're getting,
Yeah, knock yourself out.
yeah,
that's right.
and you'll preserve the building forever. It will never go away.
No,
So it'll be interesting to see, I mean, I just feel like you can't on the one hand say it's absolutely essential that it stay here, and then on the other hand say, well, I'm not really willing to do anything to keep it.
right, right.
So, but,
So how do we present that?
I don't know. I mean, from the outside, everybody drives by and they love this building and they all think back of many moons ago and they used to be used and everything else, but
Yeah,
as long as I've been involved, nobody's ever even asked to use that upstairs. And even without an elevator, we don't have to have an elevator for that to be usable.
you know,
And it doesn't, nobody has an interest. I mean, the fire department even stopped using it. They could have been using that.
but if you have a public event, you have to be able to get the public up there.
No,
You don't?
No.
You don't?
we do not, no, we've already asked all these questions. That's why we're not mandatory to have an elevator up there. Anybody can rent it for any event. We could hold a town meeting up there. We're not going to, but just
Maybe-
because of that, personally, we want the people to be able to go, but
Yeah.
Right.
as far as code goes, from what we was always told in the past,
Okay.
we're grandfathered under the laws. So you don't have to have the elevator. But whether or not we have it or not, the fact is nobody's asking.
No, nobody's asking. I don't have much asking for this size room.
No, there's nobody,
Right.
and if we did have a different building, you would still have to have something like this front room.
Well, yes. For town,
Correct.
yeah, we'd have a conference room, a committee room. I
Yeah.
mean, it would be about this size, I would expect.
for the select board, for your committees, for your
Sure.
boards, for your,
Voting.
yeah,
Change it.
yeah, for your voting, for, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's really the only ones that's using it now.
But as far as the discussion on Thursday, I mean, we can't, it's just a discussion. We can't throw it out there, so.
You can't do anything.
We
Right,
gotta do it.
Well, there won't be any votes,
right.
other than to have the discussion, which
Right,
is
right.
kind of interesting. I guess they
Right.
could vote not to do that. But no,
Oh, yeah.
then it's all just kind of, I
Just
mean, and
discussion.
it could get, it could be difficult to hold it on the rails.
Right,
Because normally, if you're talking to the moderator, it's supposed to be on topic. And I could see this easily drifting off topic. But that's okay, I mean, that's,
is there any way that we can make I know Dale, you were gonna bring up a board with a,
I mentioned it, but we've
Oh.
gone like all
Back
these
and forth,
different
right, right.
directions, so I'm not sure what,
No.
that
But
was,
I
what do
mean-
we want?
Mike, your presentation as far as what dollars and cents for me, the taxpayer, is really what,
that's,
the only
for
thing
me
that makes
personally,
sense.
that's really got, whether it's 400,000 or 100,000 or.
Right.
The question for me is the practicality of
Right.
a building of this nature in our little community.
right.
It
And how
doesn't,
it impacts each person's tax.
the actual taxes.
Taxes. So, and saying it, like when you, and you've said it many times and I understand it, I think for the group, we need a presentation of some sort.
Yeah, and I don't mind standing up and writing those numbers down. If
Right.
you own if you have a house of $150,000 valuation, and this project is similar to the one of Central Hall,
Right.
what would that actually mean to you?
Right.
I mean, what are we asking of you?
Right, what,
And
how
what would
much-
that be like if you lived in Dover?
right,
So to me, because if you don't understand that, you don't understand our reluctance.
right, that's it. And we're bound to not spend the money.
Correct.
You know, frivolously and also to a point where people can't afford to live here. You know, we've made the decision, people can't afford their tax bills.
Well, I mean, the numbers are there.
Right, but I think saying it's because we've discussed it now 10 times or
Right,
whatever.
but I don't think
over
most
the
people
course-
would have any idea.
No, so I think we need to have a very clear presentation of that.
Yeah,
Like
no, and
what
I'm-
a mill is,
and
what a mill is. what
And I
is-
think all of us should try to have an aspect of this that you really can own.
Right.
And articulate.
Right,
But I'm happy to try to
Right.
present that as best that I can, and I'll put it on a piece of paper and.
Right.
I think another thing that is significant, it is nobody's fault, but the reality that we live in a part of the state where your homes are not even keeping pace with inflation.
right,
I know my home is worth less than it was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
That's just the truth.
right,
So if you live in a place like Herman, your home has appreciated, it's worth considerably more than it was 15 years ago. Whatever we take from a taxpayer in Sangerville is literally a loss to them. They will never, unless something changes and all of a sudden
Right.
real estate starts becoming more valuable, but at least over the last 10 years, whatever we took from them, they lost.
right. They're not getting it in the appreciation of their real estate and
Right.
their.
You can't sell your home tomorrow and get your tax base back.
Right,
If you have
Yeah.
Dover Foxcroft is probably not a lot better, okay? Dexter right now, their mill rate is north of 20, okay? So every 10 years, a resident of Dexter loses 25% of their home's value, and unless they're on the water, they're not getting it back.
wow,
And so, for a lot of folks, I mean, we know our median age is what, 56, 57?
53.
Okay,
5.
so half the people are older than that.
Right.
A lot of these folks are retired.
Yeah, 53.5.
For many of them, their single biggest investment
is
is
it,
this home in Sangerville,
right,
and in some cases, we've taken 20% of that value from them. Not in a malicious way, we had to run the
Right,
town.
right.
But all of those things kind of weigh on me when it comes to a project that isn't vital,
Right.
isn't necessary.
Well, the other good number there with that median age is that household income number,
Yep.
41 grand.
41.7,
half a mil.
Correct.
12.8%
Think
below.
about that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
12.8% below
That's
poverty
not,
level.
that's not average income, that's household
No,
income.
that's household.
So that would be an interesting ratio. So, our mill rate, we've really struggled, and we all know how hard it is, because again, this goes to how small our tax base is. Between the school and the county, we know when we get up on January 2nd, we're already at, what, 13 mil?
yeah, something like that.
And here's
Yeah.
Herman running the entire town on 11 mil. So, that's the kind of hurdle that we're dealing with. 138 students cost us over $1 million a year.
What's 138?
It's like $7,500 per student. That's just,
Oh, shoot, I didn't say.
and these things are not gonna get easier.
Right, right,
It's
right,
5 something, right, in the district?
Yeah, it was just over 540 something for the whole district. That's K through 12.
yep, the whole district,
And I've told,
Shrunk.
when I went to high school in Dexter, my Dexter High School had 500 kids in high school. So there's a,
right.
Gilbert had 350.
Decline.
yeah.
Right around there.
So anyway, these are all I think it's really, I actually think this building is really cool. And I've tried to think about where I've driven and I've been all over the state. I haven't seen too many buildings like it. It's really quite a curiosity. The question is, can the people of Sangerville afford it? And I don't think there's any way you can demonstrate that they can.
Right, and I think that's the bottom line.
So,
Well, you look at it back to the mill rate and what it's gonna cost each individual person to do this. I don't think there's gonna be very many people who are gonna stand up and say, yeah, I'll donate $2,000, $3,000, $4,000,
No.
$5,000 to fix this building.
uh,
And that's really what you're
actually,
asking them to do.
if they said that, I would love to be able to say to them, then donate it to the Historical Society.
Right.
Because there might be people who would, you could see endowments go there, you could see all sorts of things happen.
It has to be organized.
It's gotta be
There has to
organized,
be
it's
a
gotta be a
place to do
passion
your-
for it. But I think if you really wanna save the building into perpetuity, that's the answer.
That's right.
Because ultimately, there's gonna be a select board that's gonna be faced with either paying the school bill or fixing this building, and you're not gonna have a choice.
Right, right.
Now, I mean, things could change, all of a sudden people would start, you know, you could, if we had 500 new residents that built $200,000 homes, it would change everything. But I don't see that happening.
No, no. No.
No, the majority of the homes that are for sale in Sangerville right now, I mean, they're the same homes that were sale 6 months ago. I mean, you see some of the, it's kind of odd, it's the ones that are bouncing off 100, they seem to sell, and it's the ones at the 200 to 300 that seem to sell. Anything in the middle, they just sit there. They're not going anywhere.
It's pretty interesting to get online and look at the annual reports and from the surrounding towns, Dexter and Corinna and Dover. It's quite fascinating to figure out, you know, what represents a mill to them
Yeah.
versus us. And we've actually done a pretty good job when you consider what our starting point is. We don't have much of a piggy bank
No.
every year to start with. It's interesting, Dexter compared to Herman. I use Herman because that bedroom community and their real estate obviously appreciates. Their population isn't that different than Dexter. I think they're maybe 1,000 more. Their budgets are almost identical. But their mill rate's 11 and Dexter's over 20
Wow, that's fascinating.
because of valuation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you start looking at
Valuation of the county, you figure the tax base of all the businesses in Penobscot compared to what Piscataquis has.
Yeah, no, the county obligation is
That's
huge,
true, that's
but
a
it's
good point.
shared with, many more people. You can almost predict the towns that are gonna feel the squeeze, if you just look at their numbers.
I think that I would imagine that if we vote to discuss this, I know that the Historical Society has put an article in the letter to the editor, to the Observer. And so I would imagine they're gonna get up and wanna talk and state what they stated in the letter to the editor, right? And then
It's a workshop, it's open floor.
right, yeah, oh, absolutely. And then we can, take it from there as far, right, as far as,
No, all the sentiments I thought
Presenting.
were reasonable, I
Right.
totally get it.
right,
In
absolutely,
fact, I agree with many of them.
right. But their article, and perhaps they do have numbers to back all, numbers as far as how we are gonna watch this. But anyway, if, then we have to present what it means.
Correct.
To the taxpayer, because
Correct.
that's what we're looking at, that's all we're looking at,
Yeah, there's a misconception that we don't like the building or we don't want the building.
and that's the
It's not
problem.
about, yeah, it has nothing to do with the building or, it's about the tax.
That's
It's
right.
about the money.
That's right,
And when you explain it, I've explained it to quite a few people, and they all approach me the same way. We love the building, we can't see that go away, and bloody, bloody, blah. Then you tell them what it's gonna cost them, it's like, well, I don't wanna pay for that.
right,
And I think that's where a lot of the push is coming from on trying to dumb down those numbers. Because if you can convince everybody that, we can keep that building forever for just a couple $100,000 over the next 20 years, then there's no argument financially. But I would flip it around. I would just say, I can't, the conflating the town office with this antique building isn't fair to the taxpayer. This building may have all sorts of merit, and a lot of it was described in that article. But why you have to connect the town office to it, that's not fair to the taxpayer. So let's separate the two, have a discussion about the building. We'll go on with our town office, we'll build something very efficient, save the taxpayers thousands and thousands of dollars, and solve the other problem.
right,
To me, that's, until you stop the conflation,
Right,
it's
right.
gonna be difficult.
right,
It'd be like if Friday said, we need a new snow shovel to clean off the steps, and we say, okay, and then she goes buys a 3/4 ton plow truck. It's like, we didn't really need that to do that.
Right.
That's kind of what, putting our town office in this building is, it's got 2-story tall stained glass windows.
right,
I mean,
right. Yeah, yeah, It's just not.
And it's interesting, Herman, I looked at their town office, it's like a little rectangular block building.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, they could have anything they wanted.
Yeah. Huh, that's interesting.
It's also interesting that Dexter's, because you know they're on Main Street in that great, huge
Okay.
old,
Oh, yeah.
their heating costs are, energy and over $10,000 a year.
And it's a big old,
It's huge old
it's
building.
that they can't maintain.
Right.
It's kind of a mess when you walk up the stairs and you look around.
Yeah,
It's sad.
tax maps are upstairs.
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, it's cool, it's
Well, it is cool,
hardwood
but it's
floors and
just-
it's really,
Yeah.
It's not maintained, they
No.
can't afford it.
Right, yeah.
but they, their
But
bill rate is.
that's a good example of the elevator issue. You
The
know,
tax maps are upstairs.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I'm sure they're all grandfathered.
Yeah, yeah.
But they're gonna be faced with the same exact thing.
And as far as our insurance, because I know that our insurance right now has been reduced because of the findings.
Well, our insurance was reduced also because we're on the historic registry, right?
Correct.
Forget about the findings. That was number one. The
Okay,
insurance company never knew this was registered,
Or couldn't prove it. I
or
found,
couldn't prove that we was.
I
and now
said,
that
well,
they
yeah,
know, that dropped it.
so this building was, replacement value was 945,000 with 50,000 for content.
Before.
Starting, before October, when, the insurance person came to do the audit of the building. He reviewed the building and was thinking of putting up to like 1 million, 1.1 million, somewhere in there. But the fact that we are on the historical register says that we are no longer, can have blanket coverage. And what blanket coverage meant was that we covered this building for so much, the
Oh.
town, the fire department,
The
the
garage.
public garage, and for replacement value, you could use all of those funds,
Oh.
and you could have replaced this for 1 million.
So it was looking at the value of all the buildings.
Look at the value of all the buildings, and you could use, if this building were to burn down and you had a claim, you could replace it with over $1 million.
Utilize the value of everything.
Everything, if you couldn't get what you needed out of just this value. But now you can't,
because it's on the historical register.
because you're on the historical register. Because we have such structural issues, they knocked it back from replacement value, that 945 or 1 million, back to 488, 115, 488 something.
Like less than half.
Yes, because now it's actual cash value. So if something catastrophic were to happen to this building, that's all you're gonna get out of it. And you can't get blanket coverage so you can't add it to the other buildings and get
Sure.
that amount of money. All you're gonna get is 488.
So not only is
And-
it hurting this building, it's hurting all of our buildings, because
True.
this conversation applies to the fire department.
Well,
If that
but-
building over there burned.
Yeah, there's
when it was on
nothing left.
blanket,
Yeah.
all of
If
that
there
could
was a
go to
greater
that.
There's nothing left to blanket
Right,
with
right,
it.
right.
And then they wanted to take public works off because it was vacant. Well,
You know, we
Right,
fixed it.
right.
Well, I
We
fixed
corrected
that.
them on
I
that.
fixed that. So now you'd have the price of the 2 buildings to
Right.
replace
So.
one of them. And the last thing is your deductible. Because we haven't fixed it yet, they're gonna put your deductible from 1,000 to either 5 or 10. They're not telling me
Oh.
which, and it could depend on what goes wrong. I don't know. They haven't spelled it out, but they're upping it at least 5 times, maybe 10 times what it is now. So those are the insurance
So
issues.
just discussing fixing the foundation, and I know, but just sort of, just trying to pull it all apart. Fixing the foundation between $250,000 and $350,000, just, again, with no new carpets, just the,
Well, that's a preliminary guess.
right, that's.
Right, and
That if something, if we were to do that, and then the building burned down, we,
480?
that's right.
48.
That's right,
Yeah, we've already done close to 4.
right.
Yeah.
We've done,
So,
we've done 415.
Yeah,
415 into it in the last,
And you're at 488?
yeah.
right.
And
And
that's all
you
of it.
cannot rebuild this building for $450,000.
Oh, no way,
You're not gonna touch it.
no, no.
Yeah,
So
but
you-
the
you'll
number
be
you
gone.
just threw out that's only the foundation.
Right,
That's
right.
not
No, I
talking
know.
about
Oh.
the other 100 to fix the floor.
Right, so the numbers don't,
Well, and it's quite often when we're faced with a choice, whether it's, buying a plow truck or whatever. I try to see, well, what would I do if it were my personal money that I was spending?
Right.
And can you imagine doing work to your own home to the magnitude where if it burned down or a tornado or whatever, that you're only covered by like 25 cents on the dollar that you invested? You
No.
would never do it to
No.
yourself.
Right, no,
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're asking
right,
people to consider
that's
doing.
exactly right. I mean, that, as far as putting all that money in and not being insured for it,
I don't
not
even know
being
that
able to ever be insured for
I
it.
think if we did it, we might be derelict.
Yeah,
Close to it.
that's right.
Yes.
I mean, you're
So-
knowingly wastefully spending town expense.
So, you know, the explanation, and I don't know whether it will get that far as insurance and everything else, but that's another,
It's another push.
I've had questions, you
Yeah,
know,
we're already there.
right,
I mean, no matter going there, we are there.
we are there. We've overspent what it's insured for, so far. And it needs work.
and then you look at the facility assessment that says, if you've done everything that they wanted you to do, they only think the building is going to stand, be usable until 2031.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, if you would've done all.
If you've done all of it.
Everything,
If you've done none of it,
What was the original, what was the first?
It's not that far away anymore.
well,
The
let's
very
I know,
first
I
one.
know.
The
Isn't
original
that scary?
construction, the life expectancy
Here you
of the
go.
building was.
Here
the
you go.
date of construction is 1901, the gross
Yeah.
square footage is
It's-
7,680. Upgrade costs from this report are 443.3. Cost to replace is 1.152 million. Life expectancy when designed was 1951. Life expectancy as is from 1999 is 2001.
Well, we're kind of right on
And then
schedule.
life
And-
expectancy if report executed,
If the
2031.
entire report is executed.
Well, 2001 was only a few years,
30 years.
2-3 years from 19,
Right.
99.
Right.
Right, that's the
Right, right.
foundation where it first round.
yeah, so if you hadn't done it,
You wouldn't be here now.
right.
I mean, that was,
But if you did do it, you're only here till 10 years from now.
This report was incredible.
The
Well, I
problem with all of
didn't
this,
know it
though,
existed.
is right back over the net is gonna be, oh, that's all baloney, you don't have to pay any attention to that. I mean, but we're the ones that,
I know.
we're obligated to pay attention to it.
everybody
That's right.
needs to understand
That's
this,
right.
this is not your home. We do not have that choice. I
Right.
mean, it's not the
For
same.
instance, the sprinkler
liability
system
here is huge.
that we've put in 20 years ago is probably obsolete.
Mhm,
So
I was wondering about
the
that.
engineer said when he looked at it, he said, I have to look at it closer, but just
Do we do a sprinkler test once a year? We do.
quarterly.
Oh, really? Oh.
I think that Jerry does it quarterly.
Oh, okay.
But I came across something that says we have a higher concentration of antifreeze, and so we get dinged on. It goes on our report saying that it's too high a concentration. Well, they had to do it to keep the pipes from freezing.
Oh, you mean in our circulation?
Yeah.
Circulation? In the s-
Yeah.
Oh, in the hydrant
Because,
system?
because
Pipes run in certain areas where there's no heat in the building. so you-
freezing pipes gives a lot of damage.
Oh, wow.
But, well, I think for perspective, just because we know what we are responsible for example, maintaining roads. There's no matter how much it costs, it's like, wow, that's
And
too expensive.
bridges,
And bridges, yeah,
bridges.
guardrails.
Yep.
To give some, if you look at what we've already spent on this road, you could nearly do all of East Sangerville with paving. And that's something we absolutely have to do. And this is a luxury. It's cool, but there's just not enough people pulling the wagon.
Right,
That's the problem.
that's right.
Well, I see, how do you justify spending that kind of money on a lawn when you got all that you need to do? That we can't afford to do. We can't go out and pave $400,000 or $500,000 all at once.
No.
But we have this that needs that, you don't have an option. If we keep it going within the town. And I bet it'd be pretty safe to say that when we talk about roads during the budget, you'll get somebody speak up and is gonna say, what about this road, what about this road, what about this road?
They all need to be done.
I don't blame them.
I'm with you, but.
Well, and spring is coming and the gravel roads are all messy
Correct.
and everybody's.
I mean, just because you live on a gravel road doesn't mean it should be ignored.
No, that's right,
And we've learned that gravel's pretty expensive.
yeah.
So it's everything.
Yeah.
The school's not gonna go down, the county's not gonna go down, and it doesn't look like, our assessed value is gonna go up.
Right, right,
So everything is just kinda grinding in the wrong direction.
right.
But having said all that, we're not in too bad a shape as long as we haven't raised our taxes in over 3 years.
No, no,
And we paid more road in the last 3 years than historically. So, it's not an accident that that's happening.
right, right.
No,
And-
we're
and you know-
scrutinizing everything to get us there.
Correct.
I mean, there's no wastefulness there.
Right. And you look at something like, I was on the Sangerville Line Road 2 years ago.
I'm gonna have to close that to through traffic.
Local residents only.
Only. Yeah.
We were
That's
doing a
not a
house
bad
call. Trust me,
It's bad.
it was so bad. And so Rick was saying, why don't we pave this road? You know, and you think, I mean, okay, that's a whole nother story, but still, I mean, that's money better spent.
Well, like most of the Flanders Hill Road that's gravel holds up really well. And it was
Is that
originally
one
supposed to
spot?
be paved. You got one spot that we'd have to, either it's got a spring or whatever, but you really could make an argument for paving that thing.
Right.
Oh, it should be, if we do Flanders Hill, that should be, when that gets done next time, right from 23 all
It's
the way
by
to.
far the best gravel road we have,
That should all get redone.
with the
100%.
exception of that one spot.
Shouldn't be a question.
But I don't know how people get in and out of that Sangerville Line Road. I
Well,
can't.
go the other way.
I
That's the
know. I went
silly
in one
beauty.
way and we went out the
Are
other way
you familiar
and
with
both
the
ways.
Camp Benson Road in Newport?
No.
As you're coming into Newport, just before you get to the Ford garage there, if you take a left, that's the Camp Benson Road.
Okay.
You go down in there about 1.5 miles, and that road goes 90 degrees towards Dexter, back like going towards the golf course. At that point, it's all dirt.
Uh-huh.
And when that comes apart, it's unbelievable. The ruts are 2 feet deep.
I don't know how the people.
And there are a lot of people who live there.
Live in there.
Yeah,
Some of them would park.
yes.
And then walk into their houses.
Wow.
That's the one, we had rented a home down there 6 or 7 years ago, and, they had a December thaw, it went to pieces like that, huge ruts, and then it locked up, it was 10 below zero. And literally, they were ripping calipers off their cars trying to drive
'cause
it.
they're good
Yeah,
coming
because you
into the ruts and
couldn't flatten it out.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's,
Number 10 road in Dexter, we have
Insane.
friends that live on that, it does that
Yeah,
every
that's
year.
every year.
They walk in from the old Crockett Road.
Anderson's got 2 spots, it's equal. I haven't gone in and checked them out, Garrett, just because nobody needs, if you don't need to be in there, stay that often, but
yeah,
those always soften up really bad in 2 spots. But that's what I'm saying, is
Yeah.
there's so many places that,
right, right.
I mean,
Our
we're
money is
spending a
better
lot of money
spent.
on roads,
Right,
and we're not where we need to be.
right,
No.
so, okay.
So I can handle insurance, I can handle how we got to this point. I mean, the insurance and
Sure,
adjuster
no,
and the contractors and all of that.
So do you guys want a flip chart, do you wanna,
I think, for me, I need to visualize it. I mean, and for somebody sitting in that crowd and for you to just be saying these,
I've got a flip chart at home
Or
downstairs.
you could do a spreadsheet, a sheet, and just have
Do a handout.
copies and hand it out.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have a flip chart if you wanna try it out.
Yeah, one or the other.
Yeah,
I'll try to
depends
at least put in some perspective as to the impact on a community like ours versus,
Right.
say, don't.
Right.
it's not just that, we're misers.
Right, no.
It's not like it's
The
like
funding
a
is
usual
less.
I think the point
No,
of
it was
saying,
meant to
this
be
is
a
what a
gym.
mill means,
Oh, okay.
this,
But it's
carpeted,
starting with
so,
that,
Okay.
and saying, okay, so
I
that's
just
that, and
wonder
everybody
how
understands,
are people
okay,
gonna
yeah,
be able
that's
to
that.
see
And then
a
saying,
flip
okay, so
chart
that, now,
if
let's
they're
look how
sitting in the
this
back row?
impacts.
Yeah, because it's
your-
kind of
maybe
counterintuitive.
not.
It is.
Yeah.
If I
So I was
say,
thinking
a
maybe-
mill in
It depends on how
Sangerville is
many- yeah,
80,000,
Right.
but a mill in Herman is 250,000, you might
I've
think,
never
well,
set up-
Sangerville's got it better.
I've never seen 120
Not even
people
close.
at town meeting, I
No,
suspect we may
no.
see
So
more.
that's the problem, and I think.
I was thinking about how many chairs I needed to
I think you
set
need it,
up,
because
I kinda like
You
the
have plenty
handout
of
though,
chairs.
because the only thing
They
you
have
do
I
is
like
flip
the
chart.
I may have to
It's
take
gonna be
them
there
from
that
the
day and everybody's
sanctuary
Okay,
and
I-
put them
that's
back
fine.
up.
And
They
plus
have
then
plenty
that
of
gives,
chairs.
you can concisely,
If I had
you
to,
know,
I could.
start
Cause I'm
with-
referencing it and
They
they're
look,
looking.
they look
Yeah,
different, so
yeah,
we wouldn't
yeah.
mix them
And then
up.
break it out to whatever, so it's
Right.
mill rate,
So
tax
that
base,
it-
insurance.
and how it, and.
Kinda like mill rate 101.
Right.
Here's how it works.
My tax bill.
Yeah.
What does it,
Yeah.
what does
There's
it
a
mean
lot of
to
people who don't
my
understand
tax
mill
bill?
I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't until, I mean, when I was on the budget committee, it started to, I
Starting
see.
to gel.
It might
Well,
be
the
hard
push
to
and
see
pull, it's
from
like,
that
oh, no
chart.
wonder this is getting
I'm
hard.
just
Yeah.
thinking if he did something
Yeah.
and we made copies
I think that's the best way, Terry.
and then hand it out.
Because
And
then
he can stand
also-
up and explain it,
Right.
but then they can
Yeah.
have it in front of them.
It's
Have it right
more
there when everybody's
concise,
signing in.
it's more concise, you know,
Yeah.
that it
Sure.
will, it will
You
flow.
sign, oh yeah, you do sign into that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that would be great.
So
Sign in, everybody,
you
can-
make
then
it
everybody can
and
take the
send
numbers
it
home
to
and.
Yeah.
Bridie, she could have
Yeah,
copies.
and they can apply it to their own tax bill and look and see what.
Well, I'll work on something, I'll send it so
Yeah,
that
that
they
would be
can kinda
good.
like, gee, you know, this makes it clear or not, you know.
Yeah, to
so
see
we'll-
whether we
Yep.
all understand it.
And any other things, like I said, if you guys have an aspect of this that you really feel like, you know, you can get your mind around it and you can articulate it, I
Right.
would suggest you do the
Right.
same. It would
The-
be better for all kind
Right.
of, and same with you, Bridie.
Right.
I think
I
this
think this
data is,
Yeah, this is,
just don't be insulted if someone stands up and says,
You
you're
don't know what
making it
you're talking
up.
about.
Just don't be mad
Yeah.
about that, cause that could happen.
Oh, it's gonna happen.
well, I've got to talk to Irving. He called me at home yesterday. I was walking through the door and didn't answer, but Irving and I have to have a talk.
Well, you guys, that'll be good.
Well, and just as far as addressing the, you know, again, I'm an engineer, a professional engineer.
It is insulting.
So you know what it means.
I know
It is
what
insulting
means.
to say that you know more about this
Right, and yes, I
than the
mean,
engineer.
I understand.
He wasn't insulted, but I was
totally
insulted for it.
understand that, you know, that experience, you can't put, you know, there's a lot that of value in experience, but the problem is, you know.
We have a lot of value and a lot of experience in our town.
Right.
We're not gonna take that away from anybody that
No,
lives
No.
here.
no,
But I would highly question that we have anybody that's used to working on these old
Right.
buildings, jacking them up, replacing a foundation, or verifying cracks in foundations, and
right,
everybody's very educated, diverse, they all know these little pieces.
right,
That doesn't mean they all can get onto a committee and fix this.
right.
Because we're gonna be right back to where we
What-
was when we did this.
And a lot of them have done that.
Yeah,
A
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
them have jacked up old barns,
Yeah,
and
that's right,
but
they have.
but they're not spending someone else's money.
Yeah,
So, you know, if
And they're not running the public through their barn.
correct.
that's
But I mean,
right.
we've already proven how much money we already spend here, and that's kinda how, we didn't follow the direction when we did it the first time.
No.
Right.
And now that's why we are where we are,
We're
because we didn't do it.
further behind the
Correct.
8 ball because they asked for the, and that's what Rick will always say, you know, if you're getting a test for something, unless it's gonna change what you're gonna do, why get the test? You know, as
Correct.
far as your health.
Correct.
Right? So why get a professional's, report on what needs to be done to the building and then follow it? Doesn't make any sense.
No, it
Well, when
doesn't.
they did the commons, they had a committee and they did all that, and they got all kinds of professional advice.
Right.
And they followed it.
That's
They
right.
used professional
That's right.
people, they got the work done the way it was supposed to be done the first time.
Right, that's right.
That wasn't a committee and saying, no, we're gonna
Yeah,
do this
picking
and
and
that.
choosing and then finding somebody in the neighborhood that knows how to do it.
But we deal with this all the time. You know, we're gonna reclaim a road, we're gonna add 4 inches of
Right.
gravel before we do it.
Right.
And there'll be 2 or 3 people out there saying, you're crazy to add that amount of
Right.
gravel. I mean,
You don't need to do that.
we're
but-
just doing the best we can.
That's right.
But in this case, the road is a necessity.
Right,
We do need the road.
right.
No one can argue that this building is a necessity.
No, that's right.
It's really neat, cool, but. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where, because the gentleman that called me last night, I said, don't worry, I said, you're under no risk that there's going to be a warrant article anytime soon suggesting we spend 300,000 or 400,000 on that building.
Right.
So that's not how this
Not
thing is
gonna
gonna
happen.
unfold.
Right.
What do you mean? I said, that's
We're not gonna do it.
not the direction we're gonna go.
Right.
I wouldn't do that to the taxpayers. I see what you mean. So
Yeah.
maybe,
That's the way to go about it. So I think we got a good game,
all right.
right?
Nothing else, I'm glad we. So. I never thought we'd get such scrutiny about being too practical,
Right. Yeah.
but anyway,
And I loved reading all that stuff that you found.
well, that's right in your
Right.
wheelhouse.
I loved it.
Well, I
That was
didn't-
very fascinating.
Oh,
It's amazing what exists and
Well,
When you
and
go
how
looking for it and
things
find it.
drop off the radar, that's the other thing, you know?
Well, yeah.
A lot of things drop off because people don't want them.
They talk about, they
Purposely
didn't do
Right, right.
parging, and I had no idea what the heck
Part,
parging was, and I went and looked it up, and it has to do with mortar and sealing the wall. That was something they decided not to do. We have water damage.
Right.
That is
Right.
directly,
It could be associated with
could
that.
be directly associated with the fact that, that's why the walls are moving still and, you
Remember the
know.
pilasters?
That's what I was
Yeah,
just.
Yeah, the pilasters,
You know,
We didn't do
the
pilasters.
things
because
we
they're
didn't do,
too
I'm
expensive.
going,
everybody said, well, you have to have them. Well, no, we don't. There isn't any in
When
there.
we jacked up that
That's
old
why
barn,
we
we
are
didn't
where
do
we are.
pilasters.
I know, yep,
I mean,
yeah, yeah,
That's fine,
so,
yeah.
yeah.
okay, anything further? It's, springing ahead, it's 10:30. A motion to adjourn?
Really? Second.
We are adjourned.